I would like to take this opportunity to formally welcome all the guests that are present here tonight. His Beatitude Magni Messiah, Metropolitan of the Holy Apostolic Catholic Assyrian Church of the East, Diocese of Australia, New Zealand and Lebanon, Reverend Benjamin Schneemann and Reverend Moshe Barhu of the Assyrian Church of the East, Mr. Hormuz Shaheen, Deputy Secretary General of the Assyrian Universal Alliance, Mr. David, President of the Assyrian Australian National Federation, the Honourable Chris Bowen MP, Federal Member for McMahon, Shadow Treasurer of Australia, Mr. Craig Kelly MP, Federal Member for Hughes, Reverend the Honourable Fred Nile MLC and Mrs. Silvana Nera, President of the Christian Democratic Party, the Honourable David Clark MLC, Parliamentary Secretary for Justice, the Honourable Paul Green MLC, Temporary Chair of Committees, the Honourable Marie Fakara MLC, Mr. Guy Zangari MP, Shadow Minister for Citizenship and Communities and Shadow Minister for Sport and Recreation, Councillor Ines Mashaba, Fairfield City Council, representing Councillor Frank Carboni, Mayor of Fairfield City Council, Mr. Barijan Iskandrian, Honorary Council of Karabakh in Australia, Mrs. Karen Boss and Mr. Boss, Christian Faith and Freedom, Dr. Roy Barton and Mrs. Barton, National Director of Christian Faith and Freedom, Dr. Iman Sharabi, Immigrant Women's Health Services, Mr. Vashi Karamarian, Armenian National Committee of Australia, Maria Hatzigiros, New South Wales Settlement and Multicultural Affairs, Department of Social Services, Mr. Andrew Rohan MP, Member for Smithfield, Dr. Najee Hajar, Dr. Paniatis Diamandis, President of the Australian Hellenic Educators Association and Director of the Australian Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at the University of Technology of Sydney, Mr. Blair God, Australian student undertaking an extension project of the Assyrian Genocide, Mr. Simon Isabian, Executive Board Member of the Assyrian Universal Alliance, Mr. Ninos Abraham, Chairman of the Young Assyrians of the Assyrian Universal Alliance, Mrs. Susie David and Mr. David, Advisor to the Secretary General of the Assyrian Universal Alliance, Mr. Paul Azwood, Senior Advisor to the Assyrian Universal Alliance and the Assyrian Australian National Federation, Mrs. Carmen Lazar and Mr. Lazar, People of the Australian Ambassador and Principal of the Dublin Assyrian School, Mr. and Mrs. Shura Mikhalian. From the Western Sydney Young Labour, Raj Kumar, Noah George, Jesse Seton, Liam Tinan. From the Australasian Union of Jewish Students, Samantha Freeman and Sam Basson, Mr. Peter Takos from the Australian Coptic Movement Association. Assyrian organisations present here tonight: Assyrian Australian Association, Assyrian Bhagavad Association, Assyrian Baz Association, Assyrian Charity and Educational Community, Assyrian Democratic Movement Australia, Assyrian General Conference, Assyrian Carmel Social Association, Assyrian Sports and Cultural Club, Bednahan Democratic Party, Entity of Abna Nahran, Mrs. Carmen Lazar, OAM and Mr. Lazar, New South Wales Babylon Cultural Association, Redmond Zumaya from NinevehRadio.com and Nineveh TV, the Assyrian Aid Society Australia, the Assyrian Australian Academic Society, the Populist Chaldean Syrian Assyrian, Assyrian Democratic Party, Assyrian Patriotic Party, Assyrian Church of the East Relief Organisation, and the Pontian Brotherhood. A few apologies for this evening include Mrs. Tanya Davies, MP, Member for Mulgawa, Senator the Honourable Ferretti Wells, Conchetta Ferretti Wells, Parliamentary Secretary, to the Minister for Social Services, the Honourable Tanya Pull, Second MP, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Councillor Lawrence White, Deputy Mayor, the Honourable Mike Baird, MP, Premier for New South Wales, the Honourable Bill Shorten, MP, Leader for the Opposition, Mr. Chris Hayes, MP, Chief Opposition Whip, Mr. Nick Lovitch, MP, Member for Cabramatta, the Honourable Philip Ruddick, MP, Chief Government Whip, Ms. Gladys Berejiklian, MP, Minister for Transport, Ms. Stavros Krinis, Consulate General of Greece in Australia, in Sydney, and the Honourable Amanda Fazio, Opposition Whip. Before we commence with the program this evening, we would like to invite Reverend Father Benjamin Schliman to bless this evening with an opening prayer. Thank you, Reverend. We also have one apology for this evening, and it's Councillor George Bachi. To commence with the program, for an official welcome, please put your hands together and help me to join Mr. Aidan Jacob from the Young Assyrians of the Assyrian Universal Alliance Australian Chapter.
The attitude known as Isaiah, Metropolitan of the Assyrian Church of the East, Reverend priests, parliamentary dignitaries, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I was given the honour of presenting a speech as a representative of the Young Assyrians. My predecessors who have stood before you from the Young Assyrians have done a great job in raising awareness and highlighting the importance of the next generation of Assyrians. But what I've decided to center my speech on is unity, a topic which I am very passionate about. Throughout history, there's always been ways to divide ourselves, whether it be through shelter, country of birth, church affiliations, accents we speak with, political affiliations, etc. These divisions have always weakened our ability to influence change. In unity, there is networking, there is Kuba and Shama, but most of all, there is God's open hand to give us strength. Much greater things can be achieved if we unite as one people. Every nation has differences. With our rich culture and history, we can expect the same, but we must leave our differences aside. We must come together and focus on the one goal that unites us all. We must use our individual abilities to add values and cause and to create a synergy if we are to have a country to call our own. It is this very action that will inspire our youth, inspire us to unite under one belief, a free and independent Assyria. It is this unity that will motivate our youth to learn and advocate for this very cause and to work together to achieve what was once thought to be the impossible. No one can predict the future, but if history has taught us one lesson, is that our people will be the victims of genocide over and over again. As we speak, atrocities are being committed against our people. It has been 80 years since the massacre of Smyrna and almost 100 years since the State genocide at the hands of the Ottoman Empire. And just when we thought the world had matured and developed a sense of moral and human decency, we are once again faced with the threat of extinction. The extinction of a good, decent, God-loving, peaceful nation. We need to put a stop to this. Let's make this the last genocide committed on our people. Let's restore our homeland and protect our people, our heritage, culture and language. By working together as one voice, we will be in a stronger position to lobby the United Nations and and insist on our right human rights to live as human beings in our ancestral homeland. This is the only way the world will listen to us. A few weeks ago, I was witness to one of the greatest moments in our community's history. 17 of our political parties, and I believe that number has risen, had left their differences at the door and come together in unity. They created the Interim Council of the Assyrian Organizations of Sydney. In just a few days, the Interim United Council managed to organise a fundraiser at St. John's Park High School and raised $38,000 amongst 150 people in just 3 hours. This money is now on its way to the people in need. With this unity, they will take our cause to the Parliament and demand our rights without voice. Our next goal is to formalise this Interim Council into a permanent council with robust members. From our churches to our political parties not yet in the council, from our politicians to our businessmen, from our Calvin and Syriac brothers and sisters, from our intellectuals to our youth to our elders, we must all unite and work towards our one goal, to have a country to call our own. My fellow Assyrians, as we come together, we must remember to put aside personal glory and let the glory be for our nation. Let's not expect praise and recognition for our individual efforts. Let's duplicate this unity across the globe in every Assyrian community. Let's work together and achieve greatness for our brothers and sisters back home while undergoing another genocide. Let's get them a homeland to call their own, so that we may secure their futures and the future of our ancient nation. So I ask you, inspire your youth as you have inspired us. The power of unity is immeasurable. United in this cause in the hope that those whose blood has been shed has not been in vain. Rise together against the atrocities and inhumanity that has been committed in the past and is still in our very sights today, as I assure you a great deal will happen to us. May God bless the souls of our subjects. May God bless the souls of those who have given their lives to make Australia the great country it is. May God bless Australia and may God bless our Syrian nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Aidan. There has been a slight change in our program, and I will call upon each Udinka, who will be reading a poem out to us this evening. The poem is called Dima Zakara, Holy Blood.
وصانوت مرمي الزيا مطرف وليضة دهسا مقدشتا وبنيروسا مخبر دمى زكايا إديومي للخيومة تشعيتنايا جميع وخلقها قداها آوار شاقيرة إدessa نسبة يوم قديشة بتخارج سنة أمتن وإنتن قدشتا مشبخهم دمى زكايا بتخاطب أنتن أطويتا وإنتن قدشتا وكشتن عن قاتلها أرحى أخرواتن وخطواتن إديوم بتخارج وقسان دمار الأطوية وبدنهن وننون وموصل وسيمين وكركو وبغداد وطوران الذكاري وطور الدين إن أنا السادة لا هاوي ويوي آهد بخطة أخنا لها وقوة في شعر كاتب لها أرحى وهل هذا نسبة سادة عيتها وقدشتا إن لا هاوي ويوي آهد صندوقها نسبة هيمانوتا وقدشتا إذ يوم هيمانوتا مدهشا وصفر هدخى أن السهدة يولي مقاليه لا خاطيمة وتخاطب أنتن أتويتا وعيتا قدشتا وأخنا يالوم المدرشتا ورياشي وخريشتا أخا أنتنيتا نسبة دن السهدة مخلوق خيال وتخاطب بيها الأطراية وكيشتن على خاطب لها أرعى ولبلك بمدرشتا الدقلة اللي شانت يما خليا هيمانوتا تشعيتا وزوار الشافيرة وبطلة وقت من كل ابن أمتن تآتي ويا خيم إذا وإذا ما سخوخا وش مقتلانا لطلاب زدنا ومتنايا من الموت والدنيا كلهم طلبوا المريا لها ومارني شمشيخا من يخرج سندد وانت وعيتا ويوم السامة ومن كنت شميرا مريم واختاقر وغالت مغابة بسيطة
Thank you very much, Ishu. Please join me to welcome our next speaker, the Deputy Secretary General of the Assyrian Universal Alliance, Mr. Waddle Shaheen.
I'll say a few words in Assyrian verse. وطعمت مرة جزية وضرب لذلك تدشتا جهنا يدير عقماتا مشتغلان يبان ناسا أطلع يدير لها بدون ناس أمسا أطلع يدير إقارة بقول الذين قبلوا أن يوكشين لهم لها بدها أوانا اتمجد أول اتملتا وإن حكمة القرآن في كان بدي والطب دينا بتاعي هدية قد من يعد أرد دينا قد يطيكم أكشي جمتها نتفي شعباتي أمو سري خمشاء ألف دينا بطوطة وإنا بتاعي الله وحبه يو جضاني خد إلى ناني يرابولي يطوراني لينا بضايا إيكا كاميلة تحت منيانة عرض حينة دينا بقماشة ملتا ويزداني وشبك وملتا حينة بسقلوا من طماء في برناشوتا الله نجد حيوها دينا صياطين ربويس بطلابك من كل ابن ومتنا احنا تطلع قبل الوظيفة نجرب تبقى أخبارنا خذ من الخير على أثناء الفتح الكاميرا إنا بطلب أنهم كلهم إيدا قبيلة متيكم خيريكم من الأبنان شو تبيتوتا قداء يريك محل تبيتوتا سنبتا جوارات قواتاتي يريك هيا خطريشو تاسدنا إنا أسيرو within a society أنتري شو تاسي ونمضي هيرياتي تملتا يريك كلا متفيدة بإيدا وسندت نوتا يدار جيتشا صوانا دينا مارجاو ومن دفينا إلي إذا دينا مارا تبلياتي وي أودي بروتست كلهم هيريتون سنديتون سبب دانيلا شحد على محاوط بوش تستن بيت بيشا مشميتا الله اتلهيبي معها إجابتا بالقبيل لمنهن His Beatitude, Martin Isaiah, Reverend Fathers, Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my colleagues, the Executive Board Member of the Assyrian Universal Alliance Australian Chapter, it gives me great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to this evening seminar commemorating the Assyrian Martyrs and Genocide Remembrance Day. I thank most sincerely the young Assyrians of the AUA for organizing this conference. I am thankful for the presence of representatives from the three levels of federal, state, and local government offices. I extend a special appreciation to our main speakers, Dr. Panayotis Diamandis and Mr. Blair Bagel. I also thank Armenian, Greeks, Coptics, Assyrian, and Faith and Freedom representative and the Jewish representative for their presence here tonight. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire, the last Islamic Caliphate, carried out its infamous ethnic cleansing against the Greeks, the Armenians, and the Assyrians. Millions of indigenous ethnic souls perished as a result of the savagery of the Ottoman Turks and Kurds. As a result of this genocide, the Assyrians lost all their territories within the borders of modern Turkey. At least 750,000 Assyrians, 1.5 million Armenians, and 500,000 Greeks from the Pontus region were exterminated in unbelievably horrific scenes of massacre and deportations. Hundreds of thousands of women and children were abducted and forced into Turkification, Kurdification, and Islamization. The World War II Holocaust may have been prevented had mankind risen to the mission of brotherly solidarity and learned lessons from the tragic events of the genocide committed against these three nations. Preventing such an act in the future, but the world chose to focus on different outcomes. The reflection of the weakness of the world's attention and responsiveness that is still feeding the aftermath of that genocide. In recent years, history is repeating itself for the Assyrian nation. Our people are systematically driven out from our ancestral lands in Iraq and Syria. They have been subjected to gross violations of human and legal rights. Murder, rape, assault, and forced conversions to Islam have become commonplace as armed squads attempt to force Assyrians out of their time immemorial habitats. Exactly 100 years after the Ottoman Empire's Caliphate government started its campaign of ethnic cleansing in 1914 against its Christian population, nearly half a generation later, on 7th of August 1933, over 6,000 defenseless Assyrians were massacred because they demanded their rights. Today, over 100,000 of Iraqi's dwindling Christian population has been forcibly displaced over a very short period of time. The jihadists have moved in swiftly and forcibly to claim several Christian towns, forcing tens of thousands of people to flee. Women, children, and the elderly have left their homes and are continually on the move, seeking safety for their lives. We have been informed by our representatives in the region that the situation continues to go from bad to worse. 4 days ago, on August 7, 2014, Iraqi's parliament passed by majority vote the resolution introduced by the Yazidi MP Vian Dakhil condemning and calling the action of ISIS crimes against humanity. The resolution calls on the international community to persecute ISIS and to hold responsible the states and institutions that support or finance its activities. 4 days ago, on August 7, 2014, the US President authorized airstrike against the forces of these merciless criminals. We hope that more countries will follow suit, demonstrating that the world has awakened to the real threat this evil poses not only to the Christians of Iraq, but to others in the region and worldwide. The Assyrian, Armenians, and the Pontic Greeks have been crying out for justice against the atrocities committed against them a century ago. Our voices had fallen on deaf ears. For the longest time, until the advancement in the telecommunication could show in real time what our people have lived through with little or very controlled news of that tragic era. Having witnessed the atrocities of the Caliphate in the making, this time the world sees and understands. This time we demand justice and apology that has been long overdue. This time we demand protection. This time we demand a safe haven for our people. Therefore, we call upon you, our esteemed member of federal and state parliament, to support demonstrably our demands for a safe haven for our people on our ancestral lands in northern Iraq. Let justice be done, souls consoled, broken hearts mended, nation reconciled, and honor given to all those who perished so needlessly during the dark hour in mankind's recent history. Glory and honor to our martyrs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shaheen. I just wanted to note that we had an apology earlier in the evening, but Councillor George Barchi is actually here with us, and we just wanted to acknowledge his presence and thank you for being here with us tonight. Political recognition of the Assyrian genocide has been at the centre of ongoing political tension since the end of the First World War, as both the current Turkish Republic, in its denials, utilises the use of historiography, as well as governments recognising that the genocide did take place, such as the New South Wales Parliament. This essay focuses on the selective use of history used by both parties with the purpose of justifying their political stance on the issue. Please welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Blair Rigot, an Australian student undertaking an extension project on the Assyrian genocide. His topics: history as a weapon, an examination of the use of historiography as a tool to justify political positions in regards to the recognition of Assyrian genocide. Please welcome Mr. Rigot.
Ladies and gentlemen, I feel privileged to join you this evening. I feel honoured to be asked to be part of it. I'd like to firstly thank Mr. Imshan for the invitation and organising for me to be a guest speaker here tonight. Along with the Assyrian Universal Alliance, Australian chapter, and the Assyrian National Federation for putting together this seminar tonight. As I'm sure most of you can gather, I'm not from Assyrian heritage, nor am I an expert in the culture or in the history of the Assyrians. I don't have a PhD in genocide, and I'm not a World War I historian, nor am I a political analyst. No, I'm none of these things. I'm currently a Year 12 student at St. Ignatius College on the Lower North Shore for my last 55 days of high school remaining. But hey, it's not like I was counting anyway. As part of my history extension course that I take at school, we study historiography as how history is written, which is taught by Dr. D. Moss, my teacher. And we were given an assessment as for my major work, which was to research in any area of our choosing, as long as there are elements of changing historical interpretations over time. This assignment allowed for me to design and conduct an investigation into an area of changing historical interpretation, and I was required to design and develop specific questions for the investigation that add to my own understanding of the debate. And I needed to research how the writers of the opposing side of history constructed their history, wrote their history. What sources they used, who they were writing for, even the context and personal preferences of those writing history, and how it affected the product in the end. When I was first reading the assignment back in last October, I really didn't have any real idea what I wanted to write about, or what I wanted to do. As I had the freedom to research anything I wanted, I started looking at a range of different topics, such as the rise of the American Navy in the 1800s, the reasons behind the collapse of Yugoslavia, even how possible it was about the city of Edessa existing. Though soon enough in the piece, after a bit of consultation and guidance from Dr. D. Modis, I settled on the topic of assessing whether the young Turk regime was responsible for committing genocide against the Syrian people in the First World War. Now, honestly, I didn't know much about the topic from the beginning. Even the first time I was actually properly exposed to this area of debate. The area was during year 11 ancient history class with Dr. D. Modis, when instead of learning about the aqueduct systems of ancient Rome, he would tell us about the plights of the Assyrians, Armenians, and Greeks during the First World War and the ongoing denial efforts of the Turkish Republic. As I began my research, I immediately came across massive conflicting stances around the recognition of the genocide, primarily between Turkey and the rest of the world, reading through the conflicting arguments about whether or not Turkey was responsible for committing these actions. I started to realize that this debate was not the one that remained in the past. This issue was one of the present. I think that's what really got me interested in studying this genocide, because this wasn't just some footnote in history that had just gone in the past. This was much more of a real-world dimension to it. As the repercussions of the genocide have been felt by the Assyrian peoples continuously for the past century. As part of my research into the Assyrian genocide, something I wanted to do was create a way of how I could actually physically see how the historians have constructed their works while writing the arguments around the debates. So what I did was I wrote up a pre-list of 5 in-depth questions that all centered around the historian's opinion of whether the actions of the Turkish government constituted genocide, and if they thought the current Turkish Republic had any alternative motives for their ongoing denial. But most importantly, the questions focused on how they came to their conclusions. What sources did they intentionally use or not use when they were constructing their accounts of the history? As to showcase the written debate surrounding the genocide, I settled on incorporating 5 historians into my project, whom I all emailed my short questionnaires to, synthesizing their personal responses into my essay. 3 historians who openly write in recognition of the genocide: Dr. Roger Donev, Dr. Paniotis Diamades, and Professor Hannibal Travis. To showcase the opposing approach of the genocide, I selected to examine the works of Professor Joseph McCarthy of the University of Louisville and Professor Roland Ostermeer of Pasteur University in Turkey, who both openly refused to recognize the plight of the Assyrians as genocide. The most valuable insight that I gained from the responses was not just their direct answers. It was how they got this argument, but it was how they had answered the questions. How strongly they were convicted of whether or not actions of genocide was all varying to each individual. Even all 3 of the pro-recognition historians have slightly differing interpretations of what degree these actions compare to the definitions of genocide from the United Nations, and to take on the legitimacy of the actions by those who do not recognize it as genocide. As I further noted, that this was a result of each historian using their own set of range of sources that they utilized. During this time, I've slowly been assembling my own paper from my different findings and research. During one of my copious numbers of rough drafts and submissions to Dr. D. Modis, he came back to me with a new observation and suggestion. The style in which I had subconsciously been writing my essay seemed to be more focused on the current political and real-world aspect of the Assyrian genocide, and how the history had been written about the Assyrians was being used as a weapon both for and against recognition. So the focus of the essay shifted towards the selective use of history used by both parties with the purpose of justifying their political stance. Historiography is used by both advocates and opponents to persuade foreign governments speak out against or in favor of recognition of events as genocide. This includes the South Australian and New South Wales Parliaments on the 1st and 8th of May 2013. The New South Wales Parliament passed motions officially recognising the Assyrian genocide being committed by the Turkish government in the First World War. And leading parliamentarians such as Premier Farrell and the Honourable Fred formed the opinion that the Turkish government and their actions did not act in a defensive manner, and their actions did constitute comparison to genocide in comparison to the United Nations definition. During the course of my research, though, I've come to my own understanding of the uncertainty of how global politics are run, and the interconnection between the actions of the past resulting in consequences of the future. Just as a parting note, I'd like to thank those who helped me make this paper possible. In regards to Dr. Donna, Professor Travis, and especially Dr. D. Martins for his guidance and support in this project. Because without consultation and insight from Doc, generously shared with me, I simply know this entire paper wouldn't have turned out nearly as well without his help and guiding hand. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we can all agree that it is refreshing to see non-Australian Assyrians actually making a choice in wanting to understand the history of Assyrians. I think as an Australian Assyrian, I struggle to help non-Assyrians understand what Assyrians are and explaining the history and the culture, so we do appreciate it. We will now play a song which is dedicated to the tragedies occurring to the Assyrians currently in Iraq, which has been developed by Organ Ben-Shahar.
This is what remains of the home of one of the Assyrian families after a series of deadly blasts.
From the Dublin Assyrian School of the Assyrian Association, please welcome 10-year-old student Britil Tigris David.
Honourable guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Britil Tigris David. I am 10 years old. In my short 10 years of life, I have learned so much about my beautiful Assyrian nation. In my earlier years, I learned about the wonders of the greatest civilization ever, known as the cradle of civilization. That was Assyria. I had this deep desire to return to Assyria and see the great wonders. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the ziggurats, the Ishtar Gate, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Ashurbanipal Library, the Ashurnasirpal Art Gallery, the ancient royal palaces, the law courts of Hammurabi, and the ancient harp music of Kanara. Later in life, I became curious about my ancestry. It was then that I started to learn so much more than a child my age would normally know. I realized that my ancestral country of Assyria is actually governed by non-Assyrians. My mother and her parents had migrated to Australia as refugees from Iran, fleeing religious persecution by the Islamic Republic. My dad's grandpa was murdered in Iran by Islamic Kurds because he was a Christian, leaving my grandmother an orphan at the age of 4. Just 100 years ago, my mother's grandmother fled the genocide committed by the Ottoman Turks, and to the day she died, she spoke of the guilt she felt, leaving behind on the snow-covered mountains her loved ones who were too weak to continue the journey. Tragically, I learned that all my Assyrian friends had similar stories to tell about their family history. So my family, indeed all present Assyrians, are the survivors of the various persecutions suffered by generations over the last 100 years due to their faith as Christians and due to their ethnic origin as Assyrians. I thought that was then. This is the 21st century. That will never happen again. And now, in my own lifetime, I am witnessing another genocide of Assyrians. I am fortunate that I live in Australia. I am an Australian Assyrian. I am blessed because I live in a country that knows no war, that tolerates all religions, that does not allow discrimination and racism. A system that is democratic, that allows freedom of speech, that promotes multiculturalism. That is also what my punished and made teaching me. That is what our churches and families teach us.
Then I ask, why is it that on the other side of the world there is so much killing, so much brutality, and so much cruelty? I ask, why is it that my Assyrian people are being pushed out of their own homeland? I wonder, why is it that no one is doing anything about this genocide? Why are these cruel people not being punished and stopped by the United Nations? I question the powerful governments in the world. Why is it that they do not help my helpless people? After all, they are the ancient descendants of that land. That land belongs to us. That is what history proves. I imagine how absurd and horrific it would be if I was sitting in my own home with my parents and brother, and some people forced themselves into our home, ordering us to convert to another religion, leave our home, or be killed. The government, the police, and people of good conscience in Australia would not allow that to happen. So why is it happening in Assyria? Why is no one doing something about that? But with all of that, I still dream. I dream of one day travelling to the land of my ancestors and seeing an Assyria in the same glory that it was. But now a modern civilization enriched by its deep and powerful ancient history. As an Australian and as an Assyrian, I beg the Australian government and the world governments to help my people. I beg the media to expose the truth about the treatment of my Christian Assyrians, the original and indigenous people of Iraq. I pray to God to save my people. I will continue to beg and pray until my voice is heard. Me, I want to follow my life by the words advocated by Martin Luther King. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. Thank you.
Young, confident lady. I do look forward to watching her grow year in and year out and present to us, and look forward to seeing what she becomes in the future and how she raises awareness to the Assyrian cause. In his secondary year teaching career, Dr. Martyrs has incorporated the teaching of ancient Assyrian history in his high school certificate New South Wales matriculation course. In his adult education activities, he includes a great deal of Assyrian content in his short courses at the Workers' Education Association, Sydney, looking at the Assyrian heritage in Iraq and Turkey from antiquity to the present. Please join me to welcome the Director of the Australian Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at the University of Technology of Sydney, Dr. Martyrs.
First of all, thank you to the organisers for the invitation once again to address you, and real thanks for putting me on after Cartel. For showing me up. Not to mention the day before that. It's a great honour not only to speak to you once again, but to speak after one of my own students. They made me very proud singing. You made me very proud. Very, very proud with your project, which is too humble to mention. You got 100% for it. I wasn't the only mark, I was on the mark as well, just to make sure that everybody understands. on a darker note, we're talking about affirmation and denial. We have affirmation of the Assyrian genocide. We have some of the parliamentarians who have worked with Parliament who affirmed, as it is part of Parliament, that the genocide, that the experience of the Assyrians in World War I and afterwards constitutes genocide. We also have denial right here, right now, in Australia, as well as worldwide. But the affirmation and denial of what? I hope it's a word. What I just did. Genocide is a term that was invented by this man, Raphael Lemkin. Jewish by religion, Polish by birth. Spent most of his life in the United States, but never lost his Polish accent. He studied many cases to come up with the definition, which the United Nations adopted in 1948, and which today is the only definition of genocide in international law. And this is the one that Blair referred to before. This is the only definition that exists in law, and this is what we mean when we say genocide. One of the cases that he looked at was Sudan. This is one of the reasons we gathered here tonight, to commemorate the victims of Sudan in 1933. This is Lemkin's own note from his archive. He was writing, when he passed away unexpectedly, he was writing a history of genocide. And one of the cases that he talks about is Sudan. Other cases that he mentions in his writings, in his speeches, are the Greeks and Armenians and a whole lot of others. Okay. The affirmation, the good point, the easy thing. I know it's way too small, but this is the actual motion moved by Reverend Lyle 1st of May last year. And then a week later, the lower house moved a very similar motion, but it was slightly changed on this. We'll talk about that another time. The response was denial. Not an examination of history, not an examination of opinion. Straight out, it didn't happen. Stop legislating history, is the quote. You don't legislate history. We write it. We live it. This one sentence ago is history. It's happened. How we interpret it, how we interpret that event, this is also history. And this is what history extension is all about. History extension course, history courses in our syllabus, be it ancient Assyria, Sennacherib, Shabbat, all the list that breaks up what this is as much part of the Australian New South Wales and soon to be the national syllabus as history extensions. This is affirmation. Again, from the ATMA's Facebook page. The ATMA is on a campaign to block recognition in federal parliament of the three genocides of the indigenous peoples of Anatolia and Baranaka, of Mesopotamia, modern day Iraq. They won't win. Can I tell you when this is going to happen? No, not a prophet. It will happen. And in the next few years. Because the same evidence that we presented last year to the New South Wales Parliament, we are also presenting to the federal parliament. The political expediency at the moment, they're choosing not to touch it, as you heard from Foreign Minister Bishop's recent announcement. We have no position. We do not accept as they have a position getting involved in historical disputes. As you heard from Blair, it's not a historical dispute. The dispute is what constitutes the history of it. Affirmation and denial. The affirmation is education. This is how we get affirmation. This is how we've got to the point where we have parliaments in Australia, we have parliamentarians here this evening who after me will affirm that what happened was genocide. that what is happening now in Bethlehem is genocide. When you have people being told, like we heard again from Rachel, convert or die, pay a digging tax or leave. This is genocide. What is the word talk about? That's a different story. Hopefully a bit more than they did back in 1915, 1914, all the way through the 1920s. What can we do here in Australia? I'm pretty sure I've said this before. Border studies. The education system is the key. We want Assyrian history taught. Doesn't need to be a separate subject. The Board of Studies already has it in the syllabus. History extension, you can do anything you want, any topic as long as it's history. I have later here this evening talking about the Assyrian genocide. Another student who did Rwanda, another student that did about the use of history in the Israel place called Artsakh, generally known as education is the way forward. It is the key. I cannot stress that enough. I just wasn't a teacher. Education is not just about what is taught politically. It's not a political game. It's about how we, as a community, as an Australian community, remember these events. And as I've spoken a number of times in the past, we're talking about Australian history. In the song, I don't know how many of you noticed, there's some black and white footage in the background. The black and white footage looks familiar. I'm pretty sure, please correct me if I'm wrong. It was filmed by the Dunster Force in the summer of 1918, the northern summer of 1918, of the Assyrian refugees that they escorted from the Urmi plain through the mountains of Iran to Baghdad. A lot of the descendants of those people they arrested over in time. Some other ones who remained in Iraq are now the ones who are being kicked out from their homes again for the third time, at least in the last century, and probably the fourth time. The Assyrian genocide, what is happening now in Assyria, is very much a part of Australian history. And therefore, the best affirmation is to get non-Assyrians, non-Greeks, non-Armenians to talk about these issues, to write about these issues, whether it's a simple school project or something as high as federal parliament, which a number of people have done in Wales. I will keep it short for a number of reasons. But I put up the logo of that hammer. And for some of you, for most of you, I have no idea what this is. I was at the state convention today. I'm the state secretary. I'm wearing many hats. That's how I remember us in this room. We passed a couple of resolutions at our state conference. One that was forward to federal parliament, as we call them, and of course, to recognise that what is happening now in Iraq is genocide. What happened 100 years ago was genocide, and the federal parliament, the least it can do is to adopt a motion accepting that yes, Australia has played a role in rescuing people, no witnesses, and we would like to commemorate. It's not about pointing fingers, it's about commemorating the past and stopping repetition in the future. The second resolution is going to Athens. It's going to the Parliament of the Hellenes, and it calls on them to recognise the Assyrian genocide as well. The Parliament in Athens has recognised, obviously, the Greek genocide and the Armenian genocide. And we are telling them, we and a number of others, you must complete the triangle. You cannot demand recognition of Greek or Armenian genocide without recognition of the Assyrian genocide as well. During the school holidays, I had the great pleasure of being in Athens for a few days, and I spoke to the Armenian community there, and in the audience were some members of the very, very small Assyrian community in Athens. They asked me, because I said to them that I would be speaking tonight, they asked me to send their best wishes. Some of them are recent refugees but they still, in his own words, are still followers of Martin Luther. That's how I knew which church they belong to. It's kind of complicated for those who don't know. Wherever they are, they keep it. Assyrians keep their distinctiveness as much as they can. This is not only part of, and it's not only a legacy of the genocide, this also keeps you alive. There is no Assyrian country, unlike Armenia with all its problems, Greece with all its problems. We at least have a patch of dirt to call our people's national home. There is only one solution, I believe, to what is happening in Iraq. And that is an autonomous, at least autonomous, Assyrian region, at least inside the federal Iraq. There needs to be a place where Christians can be Christian in relative safety. How this is going to happen? It sounds like a pipe dream. How this is going to happen? I have my thoughts. Just look realistic at the moment, no. But then again, in the 1880s, who thought that Israel would exist 70 years later? It's all a matter of planning, it's all a matter of education, pushing the message out there that we deserve it. We are indigenous people of that territory, we deserve that piece of territory. I will leave you with that photograph. We representatives of the three communities who went to Parliament House and demanded, and we continue to demand, formal recognition by our parliamentarians. When we go to Canberra, we speak not as Greeks or Assyrians or Armenians, we speak as Australians. We want the history of our people, both in Europe or the Middle East and in Australia, recognised by our elected representatives.
We always appreciate your ongoing support and dedication to the Assyrian cause. We will now play a DVD presentation of a poem dedicated to the Assyrians of Iraq, written by Emil Shabak, who is also present here tonight.
أخي أنت وديوم بيشتو آتي يمن داها بريكا وديوم ضيي دبال الصدرخ ومشتية بنوني بخلخيكا أماني له الخليقة ولد أغذية لا لد أغذية تصطيفة لوى رطم قلبها لا لوى رطم قلبها برنخ الدنيا بنيتها يا أموات الخمم الله يا أموات الخمم الله إلى بداية أي فوقيها نطيب الله ومخدم تبه تخدم الأمطار داعريتها من داعتها وجم أمطار من داعتها وجم أمطار نور الخير دول الهيتا كانت خلق بيوش أساس قلتين دوخ
Please join me to welcome the Honourable Chris Bowen, MP.
Thank you, Nora. Your Beatitude, Reverend Fathers, my many parliamentary and council colleagues, distinguished guest friends, Shalom. Tonight we gather to commemorate those Assyrians who have given their lives in the past, committing no crime, doing nothing wrong, but simply for being Assyrian, for being people of faith and for living that faith. We've done this before. We do it every year. But tonight we do it under a dark shadow. Dark shadow of the events in Iraq which remind us minute after minute, hour after hour, that the sacrifice and contribution of the Assyrian people continues. And tonight we should use this opportunity to say no more. The Assyrian people have suffered far more than their fair share in the past, and they should suffer no more. But my message tonight to you remains one of hope, because the Assyrian people, although it may not seem like it today, the Assyrian people will one day be free. The Assyrian people will one day be able to live in Iraq, Iran, Syria, or anywhere in the world, and practice their faith in freedom. It is important that we remind ourselves of this today. Because the cause of the Assyrian people is just, the cause of the Assyrian people is right, and eventually, justice and freedom will win. We have to remind ourselves. And it's very important, as a member of the Federal Parliament, that I say to you, what is happening in Iraq is unacceptable. It cannot be allowed to stand, and it cannot be allowed to continue. But even more than that, I hope, as you all hope, I know, that in the last week, we may have started to see the beginning of the end of ISIS. There may be some way to go yet. There will be some way to go yet. But we all hope and pray, and I believe we have started to see the beginning of the end of ISIS. But let us remind everybody not to lose what at the moment is a huge challenge, but what may turn into an opportunity. As ISIS is expelled from Iraq, let us use this opportunity to say to the world the Assyrian people deserve a place of freedom. The Assyrian people deserve a homeland where they can live in practice Christianity without fear. This is the opportunity. We cannot let this opportunity go to waste. The world's agenda is a crowded place at the moment. Wherever you look, there is tragedy. There's tragedy involving Australians who commit no crime other than go on holiday. There's tragedy around the world. And it has been hard for all of us to ensure that this tragedy, the tragedy of the Assyrian and Chaldean people, gets attention in this crowded international agenda of many tragedies over the last few months. But, again, just in the last week, we've seen that this has been possible. And around the world, many thousands of kilometres from Iraq, people say to ISIS, you say there are three options: pay a tax, convert from Christianity, or die. We say no. There's a fourth option: to stay and to fight and to be free to live a Christian lifestyle in Iraq. Tonight we commemorate those who gave their lives 100 years ago, those who gave their lives 80 years ago. 100 years ago was the first time, I suspect, that the Assyrian people and the Australian people came together. When Captain Savage rode to the protection and freedom of the Assyrian people and said, stop, step no further, I will protect these people, it was the first time an Australian had stepped in to protect an Assyrian person 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago. Little did he know that so many Assyrians would come to make Australia their home. But he was a trailblazer for Australian support of the Assyrian people. We must continue not only to honour that tradition, but to live that tradition until the Assyrian people are free. Then Australians and Australia, the Australian Parliament, and every single one of us will continue to live that tradition. You need to know that, as I know you do, and every Assyrian around the world needs to know that there are senior people in Australia who care and will take what action is necessary, whether it be through our immigration program, whether it be lobbying through the United Nations and elsewhere for protection of the Assyrian people, whatever it is, that what needs to be done will be done. I have a message in my pocket from Bill Shorten. I'm not going to read it to you. Hermes Shedin has already put it on the AUA website. You have many speakers. You don't need to hear the message. What you need to hear is that you have senior people in the Australian Parliament who understand. Bill Shorten met with Hermes and David a few weeks ago to talk about this. To hear the concerns of the Assyrian people. You need to know that we, in Australia, have these people of seniority who understand the Assyrian issue and who care and who will act. This has been raised with the Iraqi ambassador, and he's been told the opposition stands in support of the Assyrian people and their quests for freedom. It's important that that message goes out. It's important, even more so, that tonight the message goes out many thousands of kilometres from Iraq, that Australia cares and stands with the Assyrian people, and the message, simple one, goes out. Allah, Natia, Orakin, Ahunta, and Kareta.
Thank you, Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen. I just wanted to let you all know that we are going to continue through with the program. There won't be any break in between. There is tea and coffee at the back of the room if you feel that you do need to stop and have a bit of a break before we continue through. We do also have donation boxes